Welcome to the regularly, can you call it a regular call meeting? I guess, is that what it technically is? Okay. Regular call meeting of the Danville Architectural History Board, August 21st, 2024. It is a little after 9:30 a.m. First order of business on our agenda is approval of the minutes from 5/15/24.
Did you all have any questions about those?
You all remember last May, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that this year, May? or-
This year, May,
Okay.
No comments here.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve the minutes of May 15th.
We have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Have a second from Lynn. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Let me just take the chairman's discretion here. Kind of an update for the record. John Bowling is being released, he told me, from Cardinal Hill this morning, so he
Great.
should be back with us very soon. Also want to thank, in my absence, Mr. Gary Nogle, who our vice chair handled very good meetings in my absence. So anyway, on to item number 3, certificate of appropriateness hearing. And I will turn that over to you, Ms. House.
I believe that we have a representative here for, please step right up to the microphone. This building was part of the exception that we wanted to pull away from the historic district to begin with some last year. That will come back around to us. I will let Ms. Richard tell you about her project, and then we can discuss it at will.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. Do you like the design on Church Street, since I'm going about this all the wrong way? So I've already submitted a materials list to you guys. So basically what we did was, when we purchased the property, we inherited 50 years of deferred maintenance, for lack of a better word. So my goal was really to come in, give the community something to be proud of, start some new businesses in there, hopefully generate some tax dollars for the city and county, and make Church Street look a little bit more like downtown ought to look. So what we did in that process, exterior-wise, was start with siding. It's black board and batten siding, certaintied. We took out some residential features. There was a residential window that was leaking. There was a front door that was a residential front door like you'd see on a home. And we put in just, glass with side lights, just a commercial front door. Everything was done professionally with contractors. They're adding a new roof today that doesn't necessarily matter to you guys, but it's just, again, deferred maintenance. It was a concrete block building that just needed a lot of love. So the awnings are made with cedar and metal. Again, I think they're all quality materials. You may not agree with me, but we tried to do our best to make it a better place for downtown and bring in business. But I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about it.
I'll defer to my two
Sure.
professionals here.
Well, I'll kick it off, because this is easy. You did an excellent job.
Well, thank you. You had me sweating there for a little while.
No, it's really, really quite nice. It's in keeping with downtown, but at the same time, it's got its own character, and I think the color palette is very nice. Looking forward to some signage.
Yes, that is in the works. I haven't filled out anything. Really, it may come from my tenants. I don't know. I need to have that conversation with J. Crew and Magnolia Salon and Spa, how they, if they want me to apply on their behalf. But we have agreed. I sent preliminary signs to Joni. It's just, a basic black sign with a hang down feature. I don't know the proper terminology, but I think everybody would be agreeable, I feel like, to that.
Yeah. Well, the building's come a long ways, so thank you very much.
I have to
Well-
agree, thank you.
You're welcome. I got a few gray hairs since then, but
What is your name again?
My name is Laura Richard, but the building is technically owned by Larland Beef LLC. So, and in the future, now that I know the process, I'll be happy to come, and do it the proper way if there's any others.
As you all look at your staff report, this is a non-contributing building, and we're all fully aware of it. It was one of the buildings there on Church Street that we made an attempt to actually remove from the historic district some time ago, and we're hoping to do that again
Okay,
very soon.
so does that mean if that happens, then
You will
this
not-
board wouldn't necessarily have to approve, it would just
No,
be P
if
and Z?
you are pulled out of that district overlay, you will not have to do the COA.
Would that be all of church that would happen?
That was the initial plan, but again, that's a process that we've got to go through, restart completely from the beginning.
Okay.
And I'll let you know.
Okay.
You'll have ample notice if that actually happens. But the fact that this is a non-contributing building, it's a masonry block structure, we cannot really, or we should not, our guidelines allow us not to view this in such rigid guidelines as we would a contributing building that's in the district. The project is keeping within the character of the adjacent non-contributing structures. There was no impact of any sort on any character-defining features that was architecturally significant on that building to begin
Other
with.
than making everything look better.
Yeah, well,
So
yes,
thank
it
you.
does look better. Its relationship to the street, its setbacks, was not altered at all, and frankly, it did improve the streetscape there considerably. There was no impact on the massing, rhythm, setback, orientation, or articulation of that building. So therefore, I have recommended that you all approve this without any conditions.
We have a recommendation. Do I hear a motion to approve?
I move to approve it. I wasn't aware that any of this was going on, and I drove by it, and I thought, wow, somebody really fixed that up. Yeah, and move that we approve this.
I have a motion to approve. Do I hear a second? Have
To,
a second?
to the movement in the second, I wonder if we could have one or two reasons stated for the justified.
I will select those reasons from Jim's report.
Yes,
Okay.
I would, with the motion, I would say that it was approved with due to that it is a non-contributing building,
Non-contributing.
and that there was no architectural impact for the building, and it did not affect the streetscape.
And it's a non-contributing.
That is correct, it
Structure.
is non-contributing structure.
I'll fix it up at the end.
Thank you.
I'll make it.
And it looks good. Doesn't that count?
Not really. I hate to say that,
Looks
but
good
not
or looks
really.
better, don't count. but it
Don't
should.
count.
We need to write that in the
But
new ordinance.
it does improve that streetscape considerably, so I think I have no problem recommending the
I
approval of
believe
this.
technically we have an amended motion then, so do I have a
Yes.
second? Still have a second. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
for
Have a great
being
day.
A good citizen downtown.
Thank you, ma'am, and if you have anything else, call me, and we'll
Okay.
get those signs worked out for you. No problem.
I believe, Joni, our next consideration is 200 West Walnut.
That's correct. Mr. Tillman, I believe, is
Yes,
here
sir.
to represent that congregation.
Mr. Tillman, come forth, please, sir.
I will let Mr. Tillman tell you about the project, and then we will discuss.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I am Enos Tillman. I'm a trustee as well as a member of First Baptist Church. And the project was basically to upgrade our porch, steps, and a landing. And the problem was our porch was actually sinking. It was concrete, it was cracking, and the steps was deteriorating. I think it's like 57 years old, and the bottom landing was also deteriorating. So the project was to upgrade and also meet the compliance as it relates to ADA approval. So our steps were, the original steps were like 9 inches, the rise, and the run was only 11 inches. So per ADA, we made those steps 6 1/4 by 16 inches as far as the run and the rise. And rather than going back with concrete, we chose to go with bluestone, which is thermal grade bluestone. And we also had to change the handrails on this project also. Likewise, those handrails also put in per ADA standards. And the bluestone itself is a thermal grade bluestone, which basically say that you don't have to put salt and it won't break them down.
Me and the microphone. Thank you, Mr. Tillman. I went over and met with Mr. Tillman and looked at the church. As a matter of fact, I set their alarm system off when I went in. So that was an exciting day. Mr. Tillman went above and beyond providing us the information that we need to review it. This is one of the best applications I've ever gotten, so thank you very
I was
much.
gonna comment on that. Looks like some first-class engineer worked this up somewhere. Do we know any engineers involved with this project?
Yeah, I think we do.
Basically, that's my background. I'm mechanical.
That's fine. I'm blowing your horn just a little bit. Bear with me here.
So, the church, it is a really cool church. It's made in the 60s. I love the interior doors on that. So that is a cool building. And I think it may also at this particular time be eligible for listing on the National Register of Historic Places. So that's a conversation we probably could have in the future if you're interested in doing that, which will open you up for some tax credits and other grants. So let's have that conversation. With the findings of fact, we are always considered alternative materials very carefully. And in this case, the concrete steps were in really bad shape. They were spalling, coming apart, and they were not ADA compliant at all. The replacement material is a durable material of Pennsylvania bluestone pavers, so that really meets our standard of making sure that that replacement material is durable and appropriate. The handrails are a powder-coated black material, so again, very durable and appropriate. There was no environmental impacts on the property. There was really no change to the facade at all that would impact the setbacks on the building. And it is now ADA compliant, which makes it much more accessible to the older members of the congregation. And so I believe we are within our purview to recommend approval on this with no conditions. If you have any questions, I'm sure we'd be glad to answer.
I would just concur. The application was excellent.
Yes.
The application was excellent,
Thank you.
and I'm trying to salvage some of the steps of my 1896 house. I might give you a call.
We'll be glad to help.
Every time it rains and snows, a little bit of them dissipate, and I'm more concerned about the postal worker coming up. But when I went through the application, I just said, this is amazing. Well done.
Thank you.
So if you are going to approve, let's do the motion. And I'm sorry that I didn't write one out for you. I probably should have. But we probably should ground that also in the findings of fact, that the motion should be that there was no alteration significantly of the building, and that the materials, the replacement materials were durable, and that it is now ADA compliant.
Do I have a motion saying what she said?
Motion to say what she said.
You got that, Madam Secretary? Most of it? Verbatim. Very good. I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Nogle, second. Any additional discussion? All in favor? Aye. Aye. Motion passed. Mr. Tillman, thank you for your time and your effort. And it's a gorgeous looking improvement on that. Those old spalling steps were just, so thanks for fixing those.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Ash, for having me.
Hey, and let's talk about the historic register.
Okay, well,
When give me a call or I'll email you. Let's get together and talk about that, because I think.
Seriously, that could give you some financial incentive to do some
Absolutely.
things.
And I suspect that building is now, would be a pretty easy fit for that, so, especially with that interior. That is such a cool interior, so let's talk about that.
okay, thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you, sir.
Have a good day. Thank you, sir.
Right.
All right. Madam Staff Person,
Yes. Moving right along.
moving along.
I believe that we have the representatives from Casa of the Bluegrass here today to talk about the mural application they want to put on 473 West Walnut, which I believe is also one of the buildings we wanted to pull out of the district.
Visuals, thank you.
Thank you so very much.
I love murals.
I do too.
We need more murals.
Good morning, and thank you all for having us. I'm sure I'm not going to receive any compliments on my application. I was actually going to say, good job on being able to read it. But we are applying to just basically place this mural on the side of the 473 West Walnut, which is owned by Jeffrey Baird. Our artist will be Brandon Long, and we'll be using paint, so I'm not really sure any other questions that you all might have. Okay.
As we go down the path of murals again, we have defined murals as a sign in the way that we look at them. The findings of facts, very simple on this. It is on a secondary facade, which is compliant to our design guidelines. It is a painted flat sign. In as much as that's a great design, we don't particularly look at the design, but it does meet our requirements of being on a secondary facade and being a painted flat sign. And so therefore, I would recommend approval from this board without conditions.
I'd like to make a comment. I love murals, and I think Danville has quite a few murals that have been very well done. This one looks like it'll be equally up to that standard. I'd like to encourage more murals. There's a lot of opportunities downtown for that. But I appreciate your design and the vibrancy of the color, and I think it's great.
Thank you.
Very good. My only I like it. I think it's great. My only question is, there's been some legal issues in some other municipalities with who owns the artwork. Should they decide to remove it, or the owner wants to remove it? Do you know, has that been addressed in this case?
Not particularly in this case. As it's Brandon, I don't particularly think that you guys are gonna run into that situation. However, you do need to be aware, you may want to enter into an agreement with him that belongs to you.
Okay.
Because there has been lawsuits filed recently about art and whose intellectual property it is. I think we actually talked about that some with the Bowl Landmark Trust, but that is something that you should be
We
aware
haven't had
of.
anything locally, have we?
No, we have not had
I know
anything
Paducah
locally.
had some issues on.
There were some issues, so my best advice to you is get a release from the artist saying that you all own that art.
Absolutely.
And that is not a requirement of this board, but it's something that you guys
It's just
probably.
a friendly recommendation.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
And I actually probably may have talked to the young lady about that when we first started this process some months ago, when I went over and met with her, but I cannot recall if I did, to be honest with you. So just be aware of that.
Okay, absolutely.
Actually, it seems to me that this is, it's not art. Brandon Long will do a great job. So we're off of that, but we don't even have to consider whether it's art or not.
It's a sign.
It is a sign. We do not consider the design at all. We consider this as a flat sign.
It's a mean, I don't think it's a sign either. But it does confuse
She's our
me
technical
about,
artist
like,
on the
when
board.
people put a mural-like thing in a window, then they get in trouble. So it seems strange that if you paint it on a wall, it's okay, but if you put it down in glass.
Well, that is one of the issues with planning and zoning, as we would do in the redo of the design guidelines, what is actually considered a sign, where its application is on the building. And that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today once we get through the COAs. But as we did new design guidelines some time ago after one of the issues with the murals we had, we don't look at the design, we specifically look at the application on the building and if it would affect the architecture of the building and if it's on the appropriate facade.
And may I ask who did the design?
I gave the idea to Brandon Long, and then he came up, yes.
Okay. It's gonna look good down there. Kind of brighten that into Walnut Street up. Do I have a motion?
Well, if I could just ask, so I'd like to hear your thinking in terms of the design and what I think the message is clear, but I'd like to hear from you.
Well, the speak up is just, that's not really our CASA line. Our CASA line is change a child's story. But for me, the speak up is Proverbs 31:8. It's also my license plate. Speak up for those that cannot speak for themselves. And so it's just encouraging people to speak up for the underserved in our community.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. So also, if you see me driving around town and my license plate says speak, please don't give me any rude gestures and I accidentally cut you off.
Don't speak, right? Don't speak.
Well, I mean, I'm not even going to say it. It's probably inappropriate.
Say what?
I think if it would say exactly what you said, speak up for the underserved, somehow get that in there, I think that says something.
We still can't dictate content, but.
I know,
we can comment
that's
on
why I
it.
said it's inappropriate. I'm sorry.
All right, do I have a motion to approve as is?
And we will do that in the findings of fact
In the
also.
findings of fact.
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion to approve.
Have a motion. And do I have a
As
second?
is, as is.
As is. Have a second?
Second.
Lynn, thank you, sir. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. And thank you all, as we've
Thank you.
talked, Ms. Griffin, for all the work you do with CASA. It is a very worthwhile organization, so thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, ladies. Let me pile through all my paper here.
Get back on track. Joe.
Yes, we are back on track. Now you have in front of you numerous administrative approvals for signs around the community. I'm happy to go through these one by one with you folks if you would like to talk about them. You have your reports here. 204 South Second Street is a post sign. It will actually just replace the panel on the posts that are already there. That's the Danville Counseling Center. Let me go through my paperwork, make sure I'm looking at the right stuff here. We had a big package this time, so. Right, that is the Danville Counseling Center. You can see it's just a basic post sign. It meets our requirements completely. It is the type and design that's allowed within the district, so our staff approved that. Are there any questions? Okay. 131 South Second Street is a pendant and a flat sign. It is, let's see, let me get the right piece of paper here. It is the Denise Fisher applied for a pendant sign and a flat sign on her property. She has a yoga and massage area on one of the old Baird buildings. I went over and looked the other day. The work is very good. It's just flat signs and a pendant sign. Both are of the type and design that are required in the district, so staff approved that one. Do you have any questions? Moving on through this giant pile. Touch of relief, so if anybody needs a massage or needs some yoga, head right over there.
Okay.
Teresa Miller did Confidently You Boutique, and that was previously where the hot dog place was on 326 West Main Street is basically a window graphic. So that certainly met our design standards, so our staff approved that as well. Any questions on that one? Okay, and then the other one was one Congressman James Comer flat sign on that specific building. It is also just a flat sign, which is of the type and design allowed in the district, so that was also staff approved. And there's a picture of that one in place. Any questions on that one? No?
Nope.
Okay. Now the fun stuff. So, if you're ready to move on, Mr. Chairman?
Ready to move on, man.
All right. As we all know, the grant rounds are coming up for the certified local government grants. And I have long dreaded doing this, but we are going to redo the sign design guidelines for the city of Danville. I've met with the mayor and the city manager, some of the city commissioners, as well as, I'm going to pull Henry in on this as well. We need to come up with some new design guidelines. There's numerous reasons for doing this, one of which is to re-educate all of the folks that make the decisions in Danville of what the public will is for the design guidelines in downtown, as well as those which are requirements of the National Park Service for certified local government. Most of those that are required by the National Park Service have more to do with the application, how it is put on the building, does it affect architectural issues. Those are the thou shalt not do's, as I often call it. Then there are the community design guidelines, which have caused us trouble in the past. So I think it is now time to get an architectural firm or a firm that does these type of things, and I've been out pricing it. It's fairly pricey, but the city knows the cost, and they're willing to go ahead with this. So the other thing, we want to make sure that our design guidelines for signage are go along with what planning and zoning also has for their design guidelines or for their particular legal issues. And also, we need to address the public art, the wall murals, again, and make that more of a codified thing, since we look at them as signs. And as Dana pointed out, we have some issues about where people hang things. In the past, or as it is currently now, if they hang it inside the building and it is not attached to the glass, this board has really no purview over that at all. Although the city attorney said that's clearly a sign, for us, it is still not attached to the building. And I think planning and zoning may have some of those issues as well. So I think it's now time to start looking at that. And that would go along with what is a clear definition of a sign. Does it matter if it's attached to the building or hung inside the window? Because as you see, Ephraim McDowell has hung giant banners that are not attached to the glass, and we really have no way to say anything about it because it's not attached to the exterior of the building at all. So that's causing us some problems. So it's now time, I think, to really address that issue. So what I would need, certainly, is any discussion that you want to have about it. I've given you a proposed scope of work to look over. It is not something that we have to hammer out today. I want to take this up with you, but what we do need is action so that I can go to the city commission and ask them for permission to get this grant to do it. It's going to run the city's, the total bill on this is going to be between $15,000 and $20,000. The grant will cover 80% of it, so the city would have to cover 20% of that. Things have went up considerably since we've had our last design guidelines done, which that's a very pricey ticket, but it's come time that we have to do this. And that might help us with some of the issues we have with these giant banners being hung inside the windows of buildings. So did you have any questions, any further discussion? Did you have any questions for Mr. Henry? That's one of the reasons I got him here today, so he could answer some of your concerns about hanging big banners inside of the window.
Well, say something? Because we talked about how to give the new signage standards some guidance. And what's the thinking in terms of getting community input?
Well, that would be part of the scope of service package that I will send out to the consultants. We would need to have at least 2 public meetings to get folks in and involved. Because if you don't have the public meetings and the public input on there, then we don't really have any teeth with city officials to uphold the guidelines. So we certainly want that. Now, there are certain things that the certified local government requires. You cannot move architectural features from a building. You cannot cover up or obstruct architectural features. Those are certain specific requirements that, those are the thou shall nots. We have to have that included. But so much of what has caused us issues in the past has been the community overlays on those design guidelines. So it has now come time to listen to the community once again. And the only way to do that, Gary, is to have public hearings for folks to come in and business owners to come in to see what is appropriate in their downtown. I often say people want to say something to the effect that, oh, you're trying to freeze it in time. Well, when you look at signage in this town in 1880, we really don't want that. They had signs stuck everywhere. They were on top of the building, down the side of the building, and every window of the building. So I think we kind of need to show that to the community and say, look, this is what it looked like in 1900, and that's not necessarily the look that Danville is appropriate for Danville at this particular point. But without that public input, we're kind of whistling Dixie. We need to get that in there.
Joni, I wonder if that's been part of the conversation at all with the comp plan public meetings that have gone on. It may not be. They might not have gotten into aesthetic matters, but I know there's been good turnout for those public meetings.
And I think once we will advertise it, certainly get it out on Facebook, get it out in the newspaper. And I will beat the drum. And I've talked to several local organizations that I've spoke to that we really do need to talk about this in a very open forum. And that also gives the city officials, both planning and zoning and the city commission, the teeth to deny something if they need to do it. That's been some time ago since we've had these discussions, and I think that may have led to some of the issues that we've had the last couple times we were in front of city commission and got overruled. If you have the community recently telling you what they want their community to look like, I think that possibly may help that situation some. And that is the discussion I had with the city manager and the mayor as well about 3 days ago. So I hate dealing with signs because they are they're not fun for anybody.
I'm trying to remember, this is at least my 3rd, if not 4th iteration of this since I've been on the board. So it's kind of like IRS regulations. I'm starting to get confused over what the old rules were and the second rules and the third rules. That's why anymore, I almost depend on you. It's like, what do we allow?
Right,
But
well,
I would really like something really, really good that can have some permanence to them.
Right. And for us, we really need to look at how it architecturally affects the building, how it is applied to the building. We're getting into sticky wickets when we start talking about design for the actual sign itself because of issues with the United States Supreme Court saying that we really can't look at that. So we need to look at, and I don't know that doesn't apply to backlit signs and illuminated letters. So those are some of the things that we need to talk about in an open forum and kind of get the public's feel on it. But for us as a board, I believe that we are in better stead if we look how it architecturally affects a building. And that may be something that, I just don't know, Tom, how that's going to turn out. But you're right. And we're not, believe me, we're not the only city that has an issue with the issues in the signs. It's everywhere. And it's one of those things that continually changes. Mm-hmm. And when you have design guidelines that are now 10, 12 years old, you have a complete flip of city managers, mayors, city commissioners. So they weren't privy to the discussions when the design guidelines got set up.
Even P&Z has changed.
P&Z has
since we did the
changed.
last
And as I've talked with Michaela, because we're now under planning and zoning, there's some things there that are not meshing with their guidelines or their rules. So I think we need to make sure that we're all running down the same lane.
Okay.
So as badly as I hate to do it to you guys, because it's not fun, we need, the time has come.
Is there any way to, as a business-friendly entity, to have like an ad hoc committee, non-binding, not about the structure or the rules, but just friendly advice to somebody who's about to do a sign that cannot be read? I mean, I stood on Main Street and looked at a sign, like from 4 feet away, scratching my head. What does that say? I finally figured it out. And, people are just wasting their money. And I think our other, at least my impetus for being interested here is not only structural integrity, but also the overall ambiance and the marketing for tourism and that supports the idea that we are a historic town. So if we could just say, maybe you might want to look at that again. I mean, I know we don't want to conflict with professional sign makers and stuff, but sometimes just the slightest tweak would improve something dramatically. Is there any avenue that could be achieved?
On this board, I do not think so.
Well, not as this board, but is it something, a service that could be offered that is not part of the law?
I would defer to you, sir, because I'm
The analogy that comes to mind for this is a recent issue with a school sign and the way that it's conflicted with planning and zoning regs, and public entities have an exemption from planning and zoning. And so what we've run into is where we don't have any leverage to enforce it, should we even wade into that area at all? I see what you're saying, that it's a service, and that, maybe some public entity could appoint a subcommittee who's just available as an advisory body out there. I think structurally it could be done, but where there's no mandate to comply, I wonder what kind of activity that subcommittee would have.
It may not matter in the end, but at least people would know that somebody was trying to help them.
Do we have was there not a beautification committee? That
There-
was,
Yes.
is that an active committee?
From what I gather, no.
No, okay.
We're supposed to have one of our members that is a member of that, and the last I heard, I was that member, and I don't think we've had a meeting in 2-3
Because
years.
that, to me, that would be the natural fit
Yeah.
for that. And I do know that the city does have through, maybe the Chamber of Commerce, isn't there like a business, because I went to a couple of those where it's
We
like,
have your Convention and Visitors Bureau, which would also, could be a source of recommendations for.
Beautifications implies kind of a judgment. Maybe the legibility committee.
well, there was, at one time, I know, because when the Plaid Elephant opened, they did where we all got together and talked to the business owner. I was a part of that, several of the city entities. I believe it's through the Chamber of Commerce that they have, if you have a new business coming into town, they'll host that for you. That might be a good fit in that as well. Because we don't have any teeth to do that. So I could look into that, Dana, and, because I can't recall what it's called, but I went to it, and it's where planning and zoning went, the historic, I went to it, the business license folks went to it. I've been to 2 of these now, and we talked about her signage and what would be appropriate, and that might also be a good fit for something like that if it was included within that. So when the business came to town, it's kind of a meet and greet of all the folks you had, and I handed them the papers for the COA and all that. That might be a good fit for that. And I'll have to look and see who spearheads that, but I'm pretty sure it's the Chamber of Commerce. But I can look into that, and that might be a good fit as well. If, you know, I'm guessing maybe you want to talk to these folks about it. Would you volunteer, Dana?
You know, I'm kind of like a critic at large anyway. I mean, it's just my husband and I talk to each other, wow, what were they thinking? You know?
Right.
But and I tend to have opinions on everything, so I could probably handle it.
Okay, let
But-
me talk with them and see if, and certainly when new businesses come into town, they do that, they choose to do that, we could pull you in.
Well, you know, any of us could do it, go to such a gathering and then report back, just so that we're aware of what's going on.
Sure.
But nothing legal, no teeth, just being an advocate for improvement.
Very well. Do you need any official?
I do need a motion from you folks
To proceed.
to proceed for this grant through the city commission, because I've got to go ask them for money.
Let me just, I don't want to beat this to death, but where, you know, just because I like murals, that doesn't mean anything. What's the general tenor of the community towards murals?
I think there is, with the arts movement that we have in town, there's quite a bit of excitement about that, but there has been legal issues of late of who owns art, who, as Tom brought up. So the mural epidemic that has happened all across the place is kind of cooling because of some of the lawsuits that have happened recently over that. For us, we had gotten into some really thick weeds over murals, and we ended up having to pull out and just look at these as flat signs. So for us, and for the board in particular, we really kind of look at the placement and how it's applied to the building. I think the folks down there at the Arts Center are very keen in putting murals onto buildings. And there are some cities, Gary, that won't allow you to put them on the building. They just put them on substructures that can be taken off, which kind of helps with some of the legal issues that have occurred if the artist no longer wants the painting displayed there, or if the building owner no longer wants it displayed, they can take it off and take it with them, or large pieces of canvas. So I think that some of those legal issues have gotten very ugly, held up the sales of buildings. It's not been a pretty football field, so to speak. So, but I think you have a very active art community here, and they would be happy to do that. But then the building owners get involved, and they start looking at lawsuits and who actually owns art, and can you take it off the building? It's cooled it off quite a bit, in my opinion, and that's just my lowly opinion.
Oh, that's interesting. I just can't even imagine how a mural could be contentious, but that's me.
Well, the people that put them on their building couldn't imagine it either until the lawyers knocked on the door.
An example is you own the building and suddenly you say, oh, I need to maintain and paint my building, and the artist goes, no, you can't paint your building. You're covering up my art.
Well,
We had one meeting about a mural where a woman who shall remain nameless came up to John Bowling and was so angry, I could see the spittle. So.
over a mural?
Yep.
So some time ago, we got out of the design business on these, and we just started looking at the application business.
Live and breathe.
Yeah, it's, I think people
Didn't know it was
executed
this
these
much fun,
murals
did
and
you?
didn't really think about the legalities or the ownership of the art or the intellectual properties, and like I said, until the lawyers started knocking on the doors. So it's gotten to be a much more complicated issue than it was previously.
Why can't a person put up a mural, but they waive all rights to it, just
Well, they certainly
Okay.
can.
blanket.
You can,
You can.
Yeah.
you can.
You can, but that's between the artist and the building owner.
What, from an administrative standpoint, why can't the city say, if you put up a mural, you waive your rights to it?
That, because we don't, it is my understanding in the discussions we had, because the city does not actually own the property. Now, if it was on a city building, and I'll let Henry weigh in on this as well, because I'm not the lawyer, so.
Sorry, I missed the question.
Well, I guess I'm trying to do a workaround here. If murals can add a great deal of vitality to a community, and particularly downtown. And if there's a contentious matter involved with ownership and legality and so forth, why can't any new murals, the city could administer the fact that they waive the rights, artistic rights to it, if the building owner wants to get rid of it?
It's interesting where murals are kind of in the public space, but what you're talking about, the administration of rights, seems to me to be a very private matter, something to be contracted out between muralist and property owner beforehand. So it's a strange balance in that way.
Yeah.
I bet the city doesn't want to get into situations where lawyers are coming knocking.
Well, I'm trying to avoid the attorneys, that's the
Right,
point.
sure.
Okay, well,
Okay, motion to approve request for the grant.
Just a question. and
Yes, sir.
discussion. I know this might be hard, Joni. This is a process question. What kind of timeline are we looking at? From today, we go to the commission for approval to the grant, and what do you think?
It's a solid year. It's gonna be a solid year.
From the standpoint of our activity, once the grant is approved, then there's a group of people that come in, and what's our relationship with this consulting group?
Well, you all will have the approval of the consultation of who is actually doing the work. We will bid it out, and there's some requirements there on the bid and how you have to get it out. And then whatever firm, and in the scope of service, we will lay out what their specifications have to be, what their credentials have to be. And then I will bring it back to you all to make a recommendation of who you think should get the project. But I'll tell you, Lynn, oftentimes we get one bidder on these. It's a very specific set of requirements for design guidelines for historic districts, so there's not that many folks out there. Previously, we had CRA, which was Cultural Resource Analysis out of Lexington, that did it. They did a great job, but they no longer have anyone that does design guidelines. I've spoken with them. So the two people that have bid on this, one is in Nashville and one is in Cincinnati, or the two people that have gotten back with me with the price. So if they both bid on it, I would bring those bid packages in front of you all to give me the determination of who you think would be the acceptable person to take the bid. It's not the lowest dollar. And so we would have that, and then we're going to get with those folks and start talking about, in several different ways, how we want these design guidelines set up, what our specifications need to be, what we're looking at doing, what planning and zoning would need out of it. So there'll be a whole lot of discussion once the consultants are brought on. But when we do the scope of services, there's going to be a defined set of guidelines that they have to meet. You have had to have previous work in cities. You've had to do design guidelines. I'll ask them for a set of design guidelines that they've done on signage for you all to review. And then if we get one bidder, that's problematic. We're kind of stuck with the horse we've bought. But if we get two or three, then you all will be able to look and make a recommendation of who you think would do the better job of it.
Will they be the ones facilitating public input?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, they will.
And so once we make that selection, I mean, this is new to me. We make the selection, we have a consulting team. how do we come up with some sort of document that says this is what we kind of want to do or change? Do we do a workshop with this consulting team and sit down and say, here's the previous problems, here's the contradictions, what's your advice to fix this? Or does that take place in a public meeting? How?
I think the first meeting would be with this board to talk about the issues, and with planning and zoning to talk about the issues that we're having and what we're looking at.
Okay.
There's going to be certain specific things that cannot be altered because they are requirements of the National Park Service. And then we look at what is, I refer to as the community guidelines or the community design guidelines. Tom has been through this process with this city, so I'm assuming that CRA spoke with you all about the process. We had several meetings with them.
Pretty much as you've described it, that's.
Right, and so we will have input, because clearly there are issues that we need to talk about, and there are clearly issues that we are not in compliance with planning and zoning. So one of the things on the scope of service would be a complete review by this consulting firm of both our guidelines and then of planning and zoning as well. And then they will come back to us to say, well, these are the problems that we see. And at that point, I think we will have the opportunity as a board, and probably planning and zoning as well, to make comment on what they're finding. And then we need to open it up to the public.
Okay.
So have I answered?
So after we have that consultation and we've got our list of recommendations, then we have the public input.
Yes,
Got it.
yes, that is how I'm envisioning it
Okay.
to go. Then I guess I'm driving the train, so I guess that's how we're gonna do it.
That's okay. I'll talk to Tom.
Well, Tom's been through this with this city. They brought me on after that was done. So I did not take part in that process. But I feel like in talking with Bridget and you all, that's pretty much how it went, unless I'm mistaken.
Yeah, I think I'm the only other one who was on the board.
On
at
board,
that
right.
You were there too.
So is that reflective of the process that
Oh, yes.
occurred?
Yes.
So, and I think that would be the process, because we do have some things that we need to talk about before we get this out to the public. Specifically, what is a sign? If it's attached to the building, if it's hanging inside of the window, does that no less make it a sign? I mean, so those are issues that we're having. And we kind of need to address those things. And legally, I'm not sure, then we're gonna have to have folks like Henry sit on this too, to say, that's illegal, you can't do that.
I imagine they'll come into this with ideas or a sheet of guidelines based on recent law, but yeah, I'm happy
Right.
to participate.
Right.
Thank you.
Do we have a community that's done a good job?
As far as,
Say, a model for good signage standards,
Bardstown, I would look
Yeah.
at Bardstown.
yeah?
Bardstown is very restrictive locally on their community, for their downtown. So Bardstown would be one, Shelbyville would be another one that I would look at as local.
And has Bardstown been successful?
They have been challenged numerous times, but so far they have been successful. I mean, they're gonna be, there's no way around the challenges, they're going to come, but they're extremely restrictive on, these are the signs you're gonna have, if you're gonna open up downtown, this is the sign you're gonna have, period. So,
And how long have those been in?
they've,
A while.
maybe 10 years.
All right, so
Yeah.
they've got some history.
They do, and you know, Bardstown really has, they've rebranded themselves as the bourbon capital of the world. So you have a lot of folks that are beating down the door to get downtown.
Yeah.
And so they're happy to follow those design guidelines because of the traffic that is produced downtown because of the Bourbon Trail and things of that nature. It's a little different here in that we don't have that drive to get your business downtown so much. But Bardstown is, I think, for Kentucky, probably the model of how it should be done. Now, are we gonna be able to do that? I don't know. It remains to be
We could
seen.
be aspirational.
We can be aspirational towards
There
that,
you
certainly,
go.
certainly, certainly.
I like
But if you,
that.
if you drive through Bardstown, have a look.
I'm gonna
at
go to
that-
Bardstown.
Yeah, they are all very uniform. I think pretty much the city says, here it is, this is your sign. as
about-
far as the pendant sign.
Does Maysville
I don't
have a
know if
good,
I'm for that.
I am not familiar with Maysville. I'm not familiar with Maysville. I do know that.
I know
Vers-
they have a lot of murals.
Yeah, Versailles has been pretty successful as well. Most of the communities that are big on the Bourbon Trail have gotten very restrictive about their signage because people are busting at the seams to get their business in there, which makes a difference. You know, if it's highly sought after, you're willing to put up with more restriction than if it is not.
Well, I don't know, if we have standards rather than just acting hungry, we really might do better.
I agree. But my goal with this is to make sure that our design guidelines are defensible in front of the city commission and that the city commission and planning and zoning have the teeth to deny someone who is
And
challenging us.
therein comes the politics, and you know how that.
I know
can
how that
turn
goes,
out.
right. But I will say this, if we are successful in having community input and a great community buy-in, then that gives the political entities the teeth to be able to say no. And that's just the facts. So you have had such an overturn of the folks that are running the city. I'm not sure, and I think honestly, once design guidelines, specifically for signs, get over 10 years old, they really become obsolete and they need to be looked at again. And it's kind of like pulling your skin off. It's not a fun process. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
Okay.
One
Did we
more
ever
time.
get a- We didn't get a motion.
Oh,
Motion to approve.
where are we?
Motion to approve her request for to proceed with the proposal. Yes.
Does that work for you, sir? Very well.
Yeah, I'll second that, yes.
Who moved? Who's-
I guess I did.
Okay.
Apparently I did.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion?
Some old business. Oh, before we vote? Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi,
Very well.
New business?
new business.
New business.
All right, now the fun stuff. I have worked with the Bluegrass Area Development District and the city of Harrodsburg and the city of Danville, and we are going to go after the Paul Brun Historic Revitalization Grant for $700,000. That is going to be a bricks and mortar grant. The Bluegrass ad has, and I gave you all the email from the Bluegrass ad telling me what their requirements are to handle the grant and write the grant. I'm a pretty good grant writer, but I'm not that good. This will be a bricks and mortar grant. It is not a matching grant. So this is just money to fix your buildings. The requirements for this grant are that the county must have a certified local government. And now Boyle County and Mercer County both have certified local governments. The grant has to be held by a third-party nonprofit, and the Bluegrass ad fit that perfectly. I talked to Grayson Evans there a couple months ago. They've agreed to handle the grant and do the grant work. I've been in meetings with our city mayor, our city administrator, as well as that in Harrodsburg, and everyone's in agreement that we're gonna go for this grant. Now, I'm gonna say it's going to be exceedingly competitive. There will be committees formed. I suspect one or two of you will be on this committee to look at these grants, as well as that from Mercer County. It is not only for downtown Danville or downtown Harrodsburg, it will be for any of the municipalities in the county. So Junction City, Perryville, Mackville, Bergen can all benefit from this grant. So what will happen is if we are successful, the Bluegrass ad will get the pool of money. It will be a project-specific grant. So if you own a building that is eligible for inclusion or on the National Register, which most of these buildings downtown are, and certainly the ones in Perryville are, can go in front of the Bluegrass ad with the project and go in front of the ad hoc committee, which will, I'm sure, I'm going to be on it, and I know that folks from both counties will be on it, so I'm going to be knocking on your all's door to get the approval. So if somebody needs new windows, they can get a $50,000 grant to get their windows done. Now, saying that, these grants the projects will have to be in compliance with the National Register and the the Secretary of the Interior's standards. So they can't apply for a $50,000 grant to put vinyl windows in the historic building. It will have to be appropriate. Now, one of the things that I've talked about with both the cities, we need to figure out how to sweeten this pot. This is going to be exceedingly competitive. To get a $700,000 grant, we need to figure out some way that the cities can do some sort of matching. One of the things I've talked about is a property tax moratorium for that specific project for that year. And that's one of the questions I had for Henry, is that, can we do that? Is that something we can actually do?
You brought that up. I took a look at the statutes on moratoria, and new to me was that you can provide for a moratorium on assessment, and that assessment has to do with the value of the improvements. You can't wipe out, at least under the statutory regimen that I was looking at, you can't wipe out the entire property tax bill, but for any improvement that's added, you can defer that for 5 years.
That would be a pretty good match, I would think. So, and we're looking at that, not only that, but numerous things. So as this moves through, we don't need particular action from this board today, but I would encourage you all to really start thinking about a way to sweeten that pot. When I talked to the mayor in Harrodsburg, he had mentioned that there was an industrial fund that might be able to match many grants for these project-specific grants that will come out of the big pool of money. So as we're brainstorming to get this together, I really do want to try to figure out some ways to sweeten that pot, because when the National Park Service is giving out nearly $1 million, you better believe everybody and their mother are going to apply for it. What makes us very attractive is that you have 2 counties sitting right next to each other, and these are the only 2 counties in the state that have these certified local governments. So as I've told the Bluegrass ad, the city of First and the First Cities make a pretty good tagline for that particular grant. So it makes us pretty attractive for that.
Is this a statewide, national, or what's the competition?
National. This is a national grant. So within Kentucky, I feel like we're going to rank pretty high, especially with the Bluegrass Area Development District spearheading it. And one of the things, and I gave you guys the kind of the overview of this grant. One of the eligible projects they really talk about is a third-party nonprofit looking at commercial structures in the downtowns. So Bluegrass ad really kind of tags that. So we could, and again, it's not just for Harrodsburg or Danville. It could be utilized in Junction City. It can be utilized in Macville, Bergen, numerous places. So it's not just for the city itself. So we're going to go for it, I think. I'm pretty sure we are. Everybody seems on board. Now, I don't know that we'll get it, but this is going to come up for several years during the 250th anniversary of the country. So we're going to get our foot in there. But we're going to be talking with you guys about your concerns, what your ideas are, what you would like to see as the criteria. So look at this grant, get on the National Park Service, look it over, and start brainstorming about what you would like to see there as the criteria for what we're looking at. Are we looking at community buildings, something that can be used? One of the projects they talked about in Harrodsburg was the community theater over there, redoing the front of the community theater, redoing the roof of the community theater. So what are your ideas? And I'm trying to start that train now, so start thinking about that as we're going to have discussions about this as we move forward. It's a good thing.
Good thing.
You don't really see these grants come along too often, so free money, I'm all for it.
Oh, it's not really free, but, somebody's going to get it, so
Right.
it might as well be us.
Right. Well, it will be, I think it will be perceived as, from the person who is seeking the grant, I think they're going to look at it as free money because they're getting a check and they don't have to match it. And, that has been one of the issues with grants in the past, specifically these huge matches that everyone has to come up with. And this one it doesn't have that. So don't really need any action from you guys today, but what I do want is you to start reading, educating yourself on it. And if you come up with any ideas on how to sweeten that pot, we need to be talking about that sooner than later.
Very good. Thank you, ma'am.
Hey, that's a good thing. I like
Proceed.
trying to get money. So,
Website.
the website, Lynn and I met with, the young lady, Melanie Crossfield, who does that. She is still out on maternity leave, but I would like to apply for a certified local government grant for that as well, to do a website, or to improve our website. There's some really great websites out there. I think it's probably going to be more than what the city, is going to want to put into doing it themselves. But if we can hire a consulting firm to come up with a website, so I'm going to ask for a grant for that too.
In all possibility, a good website could alleviate some of the misunderstandings and problems when people go on and say, oh, I need to do a COA, or I need this, or here's where I go.
Right, but Lynn and I, he came up with some really great things, and then we talked to Melanie about it, and now she is on maternity leave. So she is going to get back with me as soon as she gets off with some pricings for these websites, what a website would cost us. But for today, I would like to get a motion to proceed with that grant as well. And I don't know what that's gonna cost, guys, yet. I'm kind of depending on her because I'm not a website person. So I need to get that in front of the city commission as well sooner than later. So if we can get that motion to proceed with that today, then that checks one box.
I move that we proceed.
Motion to proceed. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second? Any further discussion? All right.
All right.
Motion, all in favor, aye? I'm sorry, aye. Very good, ma'am.
And that's that.
And Lynn will be participating in that.
I suspect I would really like Lynn and I would really like Dana to sit in on that, on those discussions. And again, we'll end up with a consultant, and then we'll need to have you guys, if you're willing to do so, ma'am,
Who else did you say?
Lynn, Mr. Bauer, and you.
Oh, okay.
So, because I am not, as we've had that discussion, I'm not a website designer. So we want it engaging, and we want to take the Gestapo fear away from people when they come into this board.
We don't want to be the sign police any longer.
We don't want to be the sign police. So, and I think positive information on that, and Lynn really pointed out, you know, let's try to make this a much more attractive, more positive, more engaging, that we're here to help you and not to beat you over the head with a hammer, is kind of the way I'm looking at this.
We've really tried to be business friendly, meet on 24-hour notice. I mean,
Sure.
but the perception isn't there all the time.
Well, I have heard in the community a great deal of, oh, you guys are trying to lock it in time. You're going to freeze it in time. And that's just not the case. And so I think if we can make a better face for this folks through their first encounter, and oftentimes that first encounter is going to be that website that they pull up and look at. And it's very cold and very, very hard to find to begin with. I think we've alleviated some of that, but we just don't, we want to be more, let's help you. And let's figure out how to get you some money and get you some assistance and look at
We
these
did
other
that
cool.
with a name change years ago. It made us warmer, friendlier, fuzzier.
Yeah, it's perception. It is a great deal of perception. And our perception, when you look at that website, is just a cold government entity. And I'm with Lynn, it doesn't help.
You
It
know,
does not help.
Needs to be more overt and actively showing people that, you know, I mean, when we're nice to somebody who's in here under threat, you know, they don't recognize how business-friendly you are.
Yeah, so I think it's time to do that. And there's really great websites out there. I don't feel like the city has the ability to do that without outside help. And we can certainly, that's part of the CLG granting, and we haven't really went for a grant for a couple years because of the move with planning and zoning. We
Do
kind of,
you need anything from this commission, or are you just carrying on?
I've gotten the motion I need, once I get the pricing, to go to the city commission and ask them for the match.
Very good.
So we're good.
Okay. Anything else?
Yes. Just an update, Joni. A few meetings back, we were talking about maybe an awards program. And you and I shared some stuff back and forth. I wonder where we are with that.
I believe that we kind of decided as a committee that we were going to base it on the the Ida Lee Willis Memorial Award that was sitting at the Heritage Council. So probably next meeting, we're going to formalize a name. And we'll be calling for that in, I believe I said that in January. But we need a name for it and those things. I didn't want to add it onto this one because we had such a huge roster. But I've got all of the criteria sitting on my desk. So I'll have that in front of you guys for a formal approval next time, and we need to come up with a name for that. And then we'll run through that process.
And then after we see that criteria, we'll have an opportunity to maybe add and subtract, or do we have to-
Absolutely.
We don't have to follow their exact.
No, we can add to it. Yeah, we'll need to look at it, come up with a name, make sure the criteria is good. But I'm gonna have what I see as a good set of criteria in front of us, so we can certainly add a track to it. Then we'll wanna have it ready for January when we call, because the idea is to move it through the process and announce it in May, which is National Preservation Month. So we want to make that award during National Preservation Month. And we're also I wanna partner with Bull Landmark Trust, to do that. And John's on that board as well. So I think we can get most of that done. But I didn't want to add it to this one because we had a pretty lengthy meeting. I didn't want to overwhelm you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else,
We
ladies and
still
gentlemen?
need a new member, is that true?
That is correct. We do need one new member. So anyone, if you know of anyone that's interested, please send them my way.
All right.
I try to make it easy on them.
Do I have a motion to pay and adjourn? That's a joke. We don't get paid. No. Do I have a motion to
This
adjourn?
is too much fun.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. All in
Was it
favor? Aye.
adjourn?